Hey friends, welcome to the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. We're your hosts and resident foodies, Epicureans, and lovers of all things travel and exploration.
I'm John, and I'm a certified somm and a certified specialist of wine, and I've worked in the wine and hospitality industry for over 10 years.
I'm Tara, and I've worked in the wine industry for over 7 years, both in hospitality and digital marketing.
When my wife and I first met, we bonded over our love of eating, drinking, and traveling the world. That passion has only grown over time. Now we want to share this passion with you from an insider perspective. We're only scratching the surface here, and we have a lot more in store that we can't wait to share with you all. Grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and enjoy the journey with us. Cheers.
Hello, and welcome back to the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. Today we're chatting with Grace Simmons, who is a confidence and mindset coach and founder of the Amethyst Palaver Hut. In this episode, you'll gain practical tips for easing into solo travel and how to make the most of those experiences so it's as empowering and enriching as possible, something that both Grace and I are really passionate about. You'll also get Grace's valuable perspective on the benefits of taking time for self-care and the importance of incorporating wellness into your travel experiences. Finally, we wrap up this chat talking about the significance of maintaining an open and curious mindset while exploring the world and how travel, especially solo travel, can translate into better workplace communication and overall personal growth as well. I know, perhaps not something you saw coming in an episode all about travel, but I promise this is a perspective you are going to want to hear. Let's welcome Grace to the podcast. Grace, welcome to the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. I am very excited to have you here finally.
Hi.
This has been a long time coming now, but I've really been looking forward to talking with you because when I was first kind of getting in correspondence with you, what really resonated with me about the work that you do is a lot of things, but really incorporating wellness into travel and just like having this really beautiful and expansive mindset, but also how you at least seems to be a huge proponent of solo travel, which I am as well. I think some of like my biggest aha moments and like learning moments about myself have been through solo travel. So that being said, I'm very excited to talk to you and dig into this and talk all things travel and food and drink and all the good stuff today.
I love it. I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, I'd love to start out with just having you tell everyone here, for those who don't know you, just a little about yourself. This could be, any fun facts about you, things you like to do for fun, and then we'll get into all of the amazing work that you do.
Yeah. Short story. I love food, travel, and experiencing new things, which is why we're connected. But I'm
Yep,
also the
same.
founder of the Amethyst Palaver Hut. It's a travel wellness company, and yeah, a huge proponent of wellness and the different ways that we weave wellness into our daily lives.
Yeah. Okay. Please talk to me about the Amethyst Palaver Hut because I was so intrigued, first of all, by the name and also love amethyst. That is my birthstone. So like I just immediately felt connected to that. Is it yours as
Delightful.
well?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I had a feeling. I had a feeling that was not chosen on accident. So please talk to us about that. What you kind of just alluded to what it is, but can you go into a little more detail on how that came to you and what you kind of offer through that?
Yeah, so I'll start with the name because I think it ties into the overall purpose.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, amethyst, yes, it is my birthstone, but it's also, I don't know, it's kind of that little piece of me which connects to the Palaver Hut. So, Palaver Hut, I'm Liberian, and so
Okay.
we have these circular thatched houses where people, like the townspeople, would come together and they have discourse. It could be simple problems, they could be big issues, but the idea is that it's a community solved problem. And that was
Wow.
kind of the basis of why I wanted to do this. Yes, I'm focusing on travel and wellness, but I think it's important that it isn't a one person like effort or
Yeah.
to reach out to your community, to build community, to reach out to people who can offer helpful advice or just a hand of support,
Mhm.
right? That's
Yeah.
the basis of what this company is. And so from what I bring to it is how do we tie in wellness, especially with something as wonderful and transformative as
Yeah.
travel. I think there's so many opportunities within it. So yes, travel is exciting and you can, go to all these different places. But I think you could also have an amazing experience going two
Mhm.
towns over, right?
Yeah.
But it's the intentionality and decision to spend time with yourself, to ask those deep questions. Why do I think the way I do? Do I actually like this
Mhm.
food or does everyone else just like it? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm not allergic, I'll eat it, right? Like
Yeah,
what
exactly.
what makes you you? I think that's pulling those little things out of travel is what makes it a holistic experience. So yes, take the
Yeah.
pictures, pose, do all the crazy things, but also who are you at the end of that experience?
Yeah, I love that so much, and I am assuming, it's probably a safe assumption that you've had a lot of experiences like that yourself, which is why it's, like, such a core of, like, who you are now, and then you do coaching as well, correct?
Right, right.
Yeah,
So
so talk to me a little bit about just well, actually, first of all, can you touch on any, like are there any specific trips or, like, experiences that you've had that have kind of, like, been even if it was, like, in a really minor way, kind of like an aha moment for you that really, like, got you on this journey of getting into this work?
yeah, I'm gonna start with my first international trip actually, which was to
Yeah,
Iceland. That was meant to be, that's amazing, and I need to go back.
that's on my list.
But that was meant to be a group trip, right? Just hanging out with some friends. And I'm
Okay.
like, okay, we're all planning this together. It's going to be great. And there was just a little snafu with the other person's passport. And then it ended up being, do I cancel and wait,
Right.
or do I just try to do this on my own?
Mhm.
And I made the decision. I was like, I've been wanting to go to Iceland for years. I finally have like taken the time off. I've put, paid for my ticket. I have to do this. And so I
Yeah.
went on the trip, and the entire experience was, I think each little step was transformative for me. So being bold enough to ask random strangers, like, okay, I think I know where I'm going, but is this the right way? Is this the right direction? Or
Yeah.
trying different foods and all of that. I think it really didn't click outside of the experience until I got back home. When I got home,
Mhm.
I realized that I had kind of tucked myself into this little tiny box to be
Mhm.
pleasant and quiet and just do my job.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I can be brave, right? I have brave moments. I can ask questions.
Yeah.
I can
You're like,
stand
"That's too
by what I
boring now."
believe.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool gift that solo travel gives you. It's you
Mhm.
maybe have made an assumption that you're a certain type of way,
Yeah.
and when you're solo, you're not asking other people, you don't have a group to help you make a decision. You need to figure out what you're
Yeah.
doing, or else you're going to waste money.
Yeah. The
so,
also that, yes.
so that was like, how do I make the most out of this trip? And I think the best way that I did that was to figure out who I was, taste the local cuisine, or
Yeah.
go to some museum that everyone claims is amazing, and just fully enjoy, and then bring that back to being the person that I am.
Yeah.
In those questions, I think that's what actually led to the coaching. So, why do I think the way that I do, and why do I maybe react in a certain way? And I realized that it had to do with emotional wellness and emotional balance. When you're
Mhm.
asking those questions about your belief, about why you are, maybe you react an angry way, or maybe your
Uh-huh.
your your quick comment is a little passive aggressive, right? There's some sort of communication that's off. There's
Yes.
some sort of imbalance that's going on, and so those questions are important. Even if you're traveling, you have to take the time just to pull back and figure out, okay, who am I? Who am I today?
Right.
What do I look like yesterday? Am I growing, or am I kind of stuck? And then sort it out from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I love that so much, and I feel like I say this all the time, solo travel is nothing if not humbling too, and it really I mean, like, man, if we were ever I'm not saying you and I have ever been this way, but, like, if you were at all cocky about traveling before or if you ever thought you had some, like, leg up on it in a way, like, I have definitely been humbled multiple times. Even if I wasn't going into something super confidently, I was just like or could just like, "Yeah, this is gonna be fine. It's gonna work out," and you never know, right? Like, something could happen with the transportation or just anything, as you
Yeah,
know. And I think that's one of the most, like, eye-opening parts of it, and you're so right. I love what you're saying here about, a lot of this you sometimes maybe you realize it in the moment, but maybe not to the extent, and sometimes it's really, like, once you get home or you're sort of back in your home base, so to speak,
hmm,
or even back in our routine, as much as we don't wanna be probably after good travel like that, to really reflect and be like, "Okay, where" exactly like you're saying, like, who am I now? Like,
Hmm.
how can I incorporate this maybe into my daily life and decisions that we make or the way that we react to things? Or, I think that's what's so special about travel is like each and every time it allows us to bring something home a little different.
Yeah.
And, we're always growing and evolving, but I think especially with travel, it really brings that out so much more and really magnifies that, which is also why I encourage it for everybody. But there's a lot of people that are probably nervous to do solo
Hmm.
travel. Like I know people in my immediate family, my husband's family that are like, "Solo travel? First of all, that's so dangerous. What are you
Yeah.
thinking?" They're like, "Especially as like a woman as you are," like all these these things. I'm like, I try not to go to sketchy places. Okay, I'm very thoughtful about that.
Right.
But, and there's definitely places I've gone where like in the past, even in like 10 plus years ago, where I'm just like, that was a little
No.
ballsy of me. I was like, wow, okay. Don't know if I'd even do that nowadays. But I live to tell the tale, right? So let me ask you this. Is there anything, maybe anybody here or anybody here listening who, because I think a lot of people that are listening to this podcast like love traveling and might be more open to solo travel, but like any tips that you might have for anybody not super open to solo travel or kind of worried about it or hesitant about it in some way, like word of wisdom, tip, piece of guidance that you would give to that person listening who's maybe a little on the fence about solo travel?
Yeah. I think the first step is baby steps.
Yeah.
So you don't have to hop on a plane and fly across the world, right? You don't have to scare
Mhm.
yourself into this experience. Um, you could start with a day trip. So
Yeah.
maybe there's
Like you
like
said, you can go a couple towns
two
away or
towns over,
something.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
seriously, I think there's so much. You'd mentioned how much we are into our routines and just something as
Mhm.
simple as taking a weekend to
Yeah.
go over, and just spend the time, get to know this little area. Maybe there's a type
Mhm.
of restaurant that you like, a type of cuisine. Go experience it somewhere else, right? See the
Yeah.
people that are around. Maybe you live in the city, go check out the like a little country area, spend some time on a farm. Like I'm not saying you necessarily need to upend your entire life, but do something
Right.
different
Yeah.
before you throw yourself into travel.
Yeah.
These little experiences are what build your confidence to travel,
Mhm.
to do those big trips. Some people, they're happy to jump in and, fly for hours and then they have that experience, but that's not everyone. That's not me.
Yeah.
I would much rather honestly have stops along the way
Yeah.
and spend more time in country than flying there. That's just
Ugh,
personal
yeah.
preference, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's the other part about asking those questions. Who am I? What do you prefer? So if
Mhm.
you're like, I don't like planes, there are amazing options for road trips. You could do a
Yep.
really scenic tour, a train ride.
Yeah.
You could just do like a really quick hop on a bus, go, I keep saying go check out a town over, but literally, like, that
Right.
is a great first step because I think
Yeah.
once you break out of that, then you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Like, this isn't so bad.
Okay,
Okay, what's a little further?
let
What's a little
me,
further?
what is, look, 2 states over? Maybe I could try that out. Or like,
Yeah.
a couple hours drive and and all of a sudden you're going to be like, of course I can hop on a plane. What do you mean? And you
Yeah.
have no idea how seemingly smooth it was for you to have gone from that first
Right.
trip to this extraordinary adventure. So whatever your baby steps look like, ask yourself those questions, figure out what your
Mhm.
intention is, what you want out of the trip, and then just start.
I love that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be some grandiose thing, like you
That's
said. I
no.
love that so much, and it's true, and it's like, and it that is such a beautiful practice of building that confidence a little bit. And even though, like for me personally, there were times where I definitely kind of threw myself in the deep end, but I'm the type of person where I was okay with that.
Mhm.
Like I almost
Mhm.
wanted that. I craved that a little bit, the like little adrenaline junkie side of me. But I know plenty of people where they're more of like, let me dip the toe in kind of a thing. But also like at least in the US too, like and well, this is true of I would say pretty much every country, like there's so much to see, even just
Mhm.
in our own backyards sometimes that we're missing. And it's really just like, testing, getting out of our comfort zone a little bit just to start, especially if that's where we're kind of feeling like we're getting, like a little stuck with it. But and just getting curious and getting excited too. Like I know there's plenty of anxiety that comes with travel.
For
Like
sure.
my husband, who co-host of this podcast, was like hates airports. Like we had an episode and he was just like, ugh, the airport is the worst part. Like no one ever enjoys the airport. And he was so like black and white about it. I was like, I love
I
the
love the
airport. What are you
airport.
talking about? I love the airport. I get my coffee. It's like everyone's traveling and going and doing fun things. I'm like, you just get there early enough not to worry about
Hmm.
TSA or whatever,
Hmm.
like it's just, yeah, it's just so funny how people have such different, and he loves traveling, but he just has such like a different mindset around it.
It's like,
So I feel like mindset is also
yes.
a very big actually, can you speak to that at all? Or is there anything like in your coaching or even just in your own experience in travels where, and this I guess maybe comes into the wellness piece a little bit where, any recommendations or things that you would say about like getting yourself in a good mindset going on a trip, no matter how close or far it is?
Yeah. So there are two examples actually. The first is, let's say you want to attend a conference,
Mhm.
and instead of that dread of, oh, I have to travel to get there, you
Yeah.
add on like an extra day, right? So you're already
Mhm.
going for an event. It could be a conference, it could be like a family trip, but you give
Right.
yourself one extra day. So that is your personal day. And I think that
Mhm.
changes it. So it's sort of a gift. So instead of you it being a
Yeah.
task of a travel, yes, you have to attend this event, and then you get to
Mhm.
enjoy wherever you are. And so you're adding a little bit of a reward to this entire trip.
Love that.
Whatever causes you to pause or like make you struggle about travel, the concerns that you have, I think it's a wonderful thing first to figure out what those concerns are. So there can
Yeah.
be anxiety, there can be hesitation, but usually there's a question and you just need to figure out what the answer is. What exactly are you
Mhm.
hesitant about? What are you nervous about? Are you worried you're gonna
Right.
forget something? You can create like a packing list, you could do a nice little
Yep.
checklist, like whatever helps you to calm that anxiety. Feel free to
Mhm.
answer it, but you have to understand what it is first. So
Like
now,
the root of it.
yeah, you have to
Yeah.
understand the root of it. So now instead of worrying about what could be, the ifs, the maybes, you're
Mhm.
now prepared. You're
Mhm.
facing those concerns head on. And so instead of like a concerned mindset, you're now focused on, okay, I'm curious, I'm adventurous, I have
Yep.
answers, a little bit more prepared. And so
Yeah.
it's the approach and your intention. Or you were talking about the difference between you and your husband going to the airport.
Mhm.
And that's kind of my thing too, is like when I get to the airport, I want to get there early. Not because I'm so
Yeah.
worried about the timing, but because I do want a snack.
Yeah.
And I would love to go and just take
Definitely.
my time and walk around and watch planes
Yeah.
land and maybe sit next to someone and randomly ask them where they're going. These are just,
Right.
that's a part of my experience of travel. And so there are other things that could kind of slow you down. The lines at TSA are long,
Sure.
but you know where you're going. You know what time the flight
Yep.
should be leaving. The flight may be delayed. Like most of the things
Yep.
that I think could cause anxiety usually have answers. And
Yeah.
so going back to understanding what those questions are and providing answers or a plan, I think that is
Mhm.
a great way to make that shift from concern to curiosity.
Yeah, I love that, concern to curiosity. It's like the theme of
Yeah.
today. I love that too, and I feel like that's such a beautiful process and kind of like breaking it down a little bit and kind of like, yeah, these self-reflection questions are really so important because
Hmm.
I do coaching on the side as well, and so there is a lot of that to it where you're just like, and no one can really like tell you these answers for yourself. Like, right,
Right.
that's what we need to kind of get to that on our own. But that's what I think is great about, having that self-awareness and almost like compartmentalizing things. Cause like we might just be so, in fear of the whole trip, right?
Hmm.
It's like, okay, but are you really in fear of like the whole thing? Or is it the plane ride? Is
Right.
it the maybe not getting to the airport on time? Or, like breaking it out and kind of, like to your point, like, kinda getting curious about what specifically might be kinda hanging us up about either going completely or at least doing it solo or
Hmm.
whatever, and it just feels more approachable kind of, and then you can, like, tackle that specific thing a little more head on, or like you
Right.
said, then you can take action to plan and have, backup plans or, just things at least to mitigate whatever stress and anxiety we might be feeling. Like, I think for a lot of people, travel is just inherently a little bit stressful, especially if you're
Yeah.
trying to make a plane or train or whatever. Like, I'm not above, my any stress or anxiety that comes around that. It happens for sure. But I feel like at least in that case, like, listen, if something happens, whatever, things out of our control, we at least can know that we did everything we could. And it's like,
Exactly.
okay, then this is part of the experience, I guess.
It
Like,
is. It really
and then but
is.
that's another beautiful mindset shift too. It's just like, okay, this is part of the experience.
Mhm.
Like, not that everything in life has to be like a learning experience, but at the same time, we can maybe be like, okay, what is this teaching me right now? Like, what am I getting out of this? And I love what you were saying about the conference thing is a perfect example, or maybe something we're not super excited about, but instead of saying, like, "Oh, I have to do this," like that idea of, "I get to do this.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
fortunate enough to get to explore or at least, like, get on a plane where there's many, many, many people in the world who don't do that or don't have that opportunity or whatever." So, I always try and come up at it from a place of gratitude and
Exactly.
curiosity, as you were saying as well. And I think that just kinda helps, even if it seems like a very mundane trip or it's not something or it's something we're even dreading perhaps, just seeing those little, like, glimmers of hope and joy
Hope and joy.
in there. And
Exactly.
exploration and all of it. At least maybe get some good food at some point along the way and just look forward to that. I mean,
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I think most airports
Yeah.
do a really great job. There's always some little
It's
thing,
gotten
right?
a
There's
lot
something
better.
to maintain. It's gotten a lot better, to be fair, and it
Yeah.
depends on where you go. But there's always
Yes.
something I think that you can find to kind of entertain yourself with.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about like the wellness component as well, because I'm very curious how you've incorporated that like into your travels, and then you also you host retreats as well
I
around
do.
wellness, or
Yes.
you yeah,
Yes.
can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the retreats that I'm planning, it's a blend of coaching and then of course the experience of a retreat.
I
Um,
love that.
the idea with that is, yes, we want to escape and we want to enjoy ourselves while we're traveling, but I think tying in a conversation with group coaching about emotional intelligence or about emotional
Mm,
wellness creates like a theme for each day. And so we start the day with coaching, you kind of go through, there's some exercises to take you through it, and then you end it with a group discussion. And each day is building on a different level of your emotional intelligence or emotional wellness. I kind of go between the two. So emotional intelligence is a bit more specific, whereas emotional wellness, there are a few more
right.
aspects to it. But and so the idea there is, yes, you're doing a little bit of solo work when you're having these conversations and getting vulnerable, but then also we're reinforcing that support of the group and the people that you're traveling with. So those are the opportunities that are available. But I think tying it into travel is something that it requires a practice. Little mini suggestions, I guess, that I give people if they're kind of concerned or well, where do I even start, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what your way of connecting is, there are 8 different aspects of wellness. And so if you want to do like physical wellness, maybe you're, a hiker.
Mhm.
I will do a nice quiet walk on a Sunday, but that's you
Love
getting
that.
out and, just kind of reflecting and like you talked about gratitude, just being out there and enjoying yourself.
Mhm.
So when it comes to that emotional, we talked about asking those questions. Journaling is amazing
I
because
was
you
going to
can,
ask you about that. Sorry, not to interrupt. But please go into some however much detail you want about this, because especially with like the questions that you were mentioning earlier, as far as like even getting back from your trip or whatever, I was curious if you kind of just do that more so like in your head, sort of, or if you actually have like a specific journaling practice about that.
yeah. So for the journaling, it's definitely either written or as a voice note.
Yeah,
I
I do
don't
that too.
always
It's fun.
remember to write out like the day of, right?
Yeah.
I think my first 2 days, I'm probably still in a really good routine. And then the third day, I'm like, oh, that was so much fun. And I'm ready to go to
Right.
bed, right? And so I think it's much easier to
Yeah.
just very quickly write a note, taking pictures. So you're kind of
Yeah.
capturing the time and place when you get back home, or maybe when you do have a little time to settle, then you can write out that experience. There's something, it doesn't even come all the way through when you're doing a voice note, but there's something just connecting your thoughts to writing
Mhm.
that just adds to that story and it adds to the experience. And I find taking pictures to be really helpful because sometimes I don't know, you mix up days, you thought you
You
went
can't
somewhere on
remember where
Thursday,
you
you
were
can't remember
when,
where you,
like,
what? And so
it's
going
so
through those
true.
pictures, you're able to like, oh yeah, this is what I was talking about. Oh my gosh, I had that realization when I was looking at that, river or garden or whatever. So all of these different elements, I think they just add to the experience of a retreat, right? You go there to be pampered, to be relaxed, to try
Yeah.
a new adventure, right? And you're now building this solid foundation of wellness. And this is something that you can take home with you.
Mhm. I love that so much. I actually, it's funny. I'm big into journaling, so I love all of that. And there's something I think very like energetic and really wonderful about putting like pen to paper and
Hmm.
especially being able to look back on it from like years from now and things like that. I also think it's very interesting with the like voice notes and things. I I agree, like, there's something great about journaling, but what's interesting about the voice notes is, like, I think it's also really fun hearing our inflection in our voice or our excitement and just or even our tiredness, I mean, whatever our frustration, whatever it is, I think it's really interesting looking back on that and also hearing that too, so, like, I kind of love both practices and whether you kind of, like, talk it out and then write it or write and then talk or whatever. I think both are like such a fun outlet and like, there's pros and cons to technology, but I guess that is one nice part about
Yeah.
technology now is like we have these literal devices like that can just record like in our pocket. And so it's super fun. And then of course with all the photos and everything, which, obsessed with taking content on trips.
So,
John
so
is
many
probably
pictures.
every single time we eat, he's like, "Seriously? You have to I can't just take a bite." I was like, "No, I'm sorry. It needs to be documented." It's so annoying.
Sometimes it's not
But
even for like social. I'm like, but this plate is
no, I'm like, "This
gorgeous.
is for me." Yeah, like, "The lighting sucks. I'm not gonna post this. This is for me." Like he's like, "This is not necessary, but okay." Oh my god, it's so true. No, I love that though, and I think you brought up, like, kind of a good point. You kind of, like, went over it quickly, but I wanna come back to it, like, what you were saying about, maybe you're there a couple days or you're there for a few days wherever you're at, and it's like, you're just getting settled and you're busy and you're on the go or maybe doing things or, and you don't, like, kinda get around to doing it, like,
Mhm.
I think that's also a great reason the voice notes can be helpful, but, like, also leaning into that, I think is, great too, and, like, setting as much time aside for, journaling or whatever we can, but
Yeah.
also, like, how amazing is it to potentially have an experience like that where you're so, like, inundated in it and
Hmm.
so in it, and like, you're so busy and having such a great time that you actually, like, can't make time
Forget to
to
journal. Yeah.
journal because you're, like, living your life so well, like, also, how amazing is that? So,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's funny, it's yeah, kind of a double-edged thing, but that's such a great little practice. I try and do that on trips if I can, like or even just, like even if it's not, like, a beautiful proper journal and it's just, like, something like this big, just to write, like, a note in or something like that, but, like, reflecting on, like, where we were
Hmm.
when, like, it's great, but also just, like, how we were feeling, and it's really fun, I think, to see even, like, depending on how long the trip is, but, like, even where you were on, like, day 1 to day 14, if you were somewhere for 2 weeks or
Yeah.
whatever, and then, like you said, looking back on those, for years to come is always amazing.
You
That's
also
awesome. Any
note how you've
Yeah, go ahead.
grown like throughout the
Yeah,
experience, right?
exactly.
So even if you travel multiple times, noting that first day to we're having a great time, traffic was a
Yeah.
little crazy, da da da, and then you get to day 7 and you're like, you know,
Yeah.
I've been enjoying moving a little slower nowadays, and I think
Yes.
it's incredible how quickly that change
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, super eye-opening. Is there anything that you do when you, like, get home from trips to really, like, keep these practices or, like, these mindset shifts or whatever, like, in your daily life? Because I feel like I hear this all the time. I think this is so common for people where we'll be on the trip or, be, like, in Italy, like, full La Dolce Vita-ing, and then you're like, "I am gonna eat like this when I get home, and I'm gonna walk every day, and I'm gonna do this and that and the other thing," and then we get home and life, kinda hits us again, we
Hmm.
get back in our routine and all of these things, like, is there anything that you've encompassed kind of in from your travels into your daily life that you would recommend to kinda just, like, keep that connection, keep that alive, so to
Yeah,
speak?
I think We talked about journaling, but journaling is definitely
Mhm.
something. I
Yeah.
either do it as like a prayer journal or just, I had a really weird dream. Let me write that down. And I think that that kind of helps you too when you're traveling because it's already a
Yeah.
practice. Um, but something else, so looking at those pictures, and what I've done is I'll take little notes,
Mhm.
and that builds to that entire journaling experience. So again, voice notes
Right.
or little mini snippets. Incorporating a practice, I think, has been like getting a massage. So I always try to add element of wellness into a trip. Let's say the entire experience of the trip is supposed to be like, we're having fun, we're going out, da da da.
Right.
I will intentionally leave a day open so that I'm resting and I want some sort of, so I will find a spa, I will get a
You
massage,
will pamper.
whatever it is, there needs to be a Grace's Pampered Day.
Love
And I
that.
bring that back with me because life is stressful.
Yeah.
And even if
Yes.
I've been having a great couple of weeks, I think it's just helpful to remind yourself, like, yes, you may be in the center of all this, but you should take care of
Right.
yourself. It's difficult to try to help somebody else out when you're just in your mind of all these things that are going on. And so being intentional
Mhm.
about just taking a quick break, even if it looks like
Yeah.
a nap, or getting a
Yes.
massage, right? Unfortunately, naps are like a commodity nowadays, but
Literally. Yes.
I think just keeping that
So
that
sad.
mindset in practice, it is though, keeping that mindset in practice, like you should take care of yourself. If it looks like
Yeah.
you're spoiling yourself, that's okay.
Yep.
Talking about mindset shift, it's a treat, right? It's a
Yeah.
treat. It's an experience that you deserve, as opposed to spoiling yourself because you don't have enough to do.
Right.
I think it helps you when you're taking care of your body, body, mind, and spirit. You're able to do
Yeah.
so much more for yourself and other people. So I
Love
do
that.
try to keep those two things, journaling and then also just a Grace Pamper Day.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I am so here for that. And I also think, great point too about, like feeling guilty for that, or like if you feel
Mhm.
like you're missing out on, because I know for some people they might hear our conversation and hear this and they're just like, yeah, but I have such limited time on this trip or whatever. Like, I agree, but like this reminds me of like one of my friends and I several years ago traveled to Spain. It was just like a little girls trip, just a friend and I, and we went to this like really unique spa that they might have one in the US. I wanna say it's like Chicago or something, but they only have like a few worldwide. It was, again, really unique, like, not something we'd be able to do every day. So, like, looking for those unique opportunities
Mhm.
that even on paper, yeah, I'm going to a spa, and somebody might be like, "But there's, like, a church that you should go look at over here." It's like, "Okay, yes, but also we don't have to do all the tourist traps."
Right.
Like, we might feel pressure to, and I totally get that, but also I think there's something to be said about, like, doing something locals might do, or, or like in Budapest, like I went to, that was one of my solo trips, and I went to one of like mineral bath houses
Mhm.
that they have, that, because they're like known for that. And I went by myself, and that was uncomfortable. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I was kind of just like there sort of floating around, and I was like, wow, this is like, it's like, it's almost like the concept of going to a restaurant by yourself, which
Yeah.
is like, at least for I think a lot of Americans, is pretty uncomfortable. Like, I think it's more like of a thing in Europe and wherever else. But, I think for a lot of us, like, we would struggle with that. It's like, what do I do? But, I was like, I was in water. I couldn't be on my phone. They didn't
Right.
allow phones. I was like, you kind of like are forced to, and, it's like you were saying earlier, baby steps. We don't have to like make ourselves profoundly uncomfortable and traumatize ourselves.
Right.
But like, but really, just an example of like a way to kind of embrace the culture and what's going on
Mhm.
around you, and realizing like it's not as strange as it seems, right? We're getting out of our little bubble, and for a lot of these people who also go there alone, like it's normal. So, but I love that, and like you said, life can be very stressful. Perhaps you had a stressful travel day, or maybe things didn't quite go the way you
Yeah.
were thinking, and like also a great way to unwind and just like, breathe and really like relax and lean into, you're like, "Oh, I'm here." Like,
Yes.
there's many times where I feel like I'm somewhere, whether it's local or foreign, and I have to like check in with myself and like, wow, I'm actually here.
Hmm.
Like, let me get grounded and like breathe into this for a moment and really try and remember this. Cause I think a lot of the time, especially if we're really on the go or if we like over plan, you miss it. Like
Yeah,
you don't really get centered and like remember the breeze that you were feeling or the sights or the smells or, like all
yeah.
those little things that like really, can kind of take you back being there. And those are the little, details we remember.
And you talked about going to the spa. When I went to London, I went with
Oh,
friends,
yeah.
but I think we kind of did it where we just caught up with each other for dinner.
I love
So it was
that.
a kind of
Everyone
a
kinda
blend of
can do their
solo.
own
I,
thing.
I loved it. I thought it was
Yeah,
pretty cool.
perfect balance.
Yes. And so I went to a spa, and some people were like, same thing, Grace, you go to spas when you're home. What are you doing? And I was like, this is
London
a,
Bridge is over there. What are you doing?
what are you doing? You know, you're missing Big Ben. Um, and, but
You're
I
like, "I'm
was
good."
like underground in a little kind of like designed grotto. And I was like, yeah, this is totally
I'm
worth it for
obsessed.
me. Here I
I
am
wanna go.
floating in this little
Give me
thing.
the
Like I
same.
got to so but like you mentioned, it's
Oh,
important to just you have to be intentional about those moments where you're like,
yeah.
this is fine.
Yeah.
I can miss that
Good.
other 5 star,
Yeah,
Expedia recommendation. Like it's okay. I let me just go do this
right.
little thing here. I heard about this and I thought it was great. I
Yeah.
that I think also ties you into that experience of travel is looking up something that you really wanted to do and
Mhm.
go do it. The other thing
Yeah.
you mentioned or you asked about practices is I always
Yeah.
try to add a day when I get home, a rest day.
Mm.
So
Yes. So important.
the like phrase I think I hear the most from some of my colleagues is like, you get back from a vacation and people are like, oh, the vacation was fun, but I am so exhausted, or I need another vacation.
Mhm. Vacation for my
I need a
vacation, yeah.
vacation from my vacation. Absolutely not. Like, take the day. Take the day. Because I
Yeah.
think it's so hurtful when I'm hearing someone explain this amazing experience they had and they're
Yeah.
exhausted because
Yeah.
they landed, like 12 o'clock that night.
Right.
So I think just that's all a part of taking care of yourself. And if you know that you're going to have a stressful trip or a long journey, take
Yeah.
a day, take half a day. Just make
Yeah.
sure you remember what your house looks like, right? Like just wash your clothes. Like just do whatever you need to do just to kind of slow it down. Like, okay, now I'm shifting from vacation
Yeah.
to, work or, back to my normal routine.
Yeah, and it's also jarring that way, and
Mhm.
I feel like it eases us back into it a little bit, and I think that's the hardest part for people is they'll, maybe try and get in, like, the very last flight that night, and then they have to go back to work the next morning, and it's like, it's this jolt of reality we have to go back to, and it's just like, it just makes that trip hangover so much
Yeah,
worse, but it also just I think in a lot of ways it makes us, like, almost kind of resentful of being home, right? Like, it's like, oh, back to
I'm
the
so
grind,
glad
back
you
to all the
said that. Yes.
yeah. And so, if you have anything to add to that,
No,
but yeah, I've
I was
I've
gonna
been
say,
there. I've
yeah.
done that to myself, and I've regretted it many times.
You're like, am I feeling depressed? Like I just had this
Yeah,
wonderful trip, but
like,
your
right,
body is like, what the heck just happened? So
right.
yeah.
They're like, "What are you doing to me?" One thing that when you were mentioning your travels in London, which I definitely wanna hear more about, that sounds amazing. I love that you did that, and also, I feel like this is another really great way to approach traveling, especially if you're in a group or whatever, is
Mhm.
like and this is sort of where, like, the wellness, the spirituality aspect of it kinda comes in a little bit, like, listening to your intuition, if something is really calling to you to go and do, I just feel like there's something to be said about that and, like, being able to kind of have the confidence to maybe I have no better way to say this, but kinda, like, stand up to the people that
Yeah,
you're around. You're like, I'm gonna go ahead and do this," and, like, some people might find that concerning, and you're just like, "No, I have limited time here, right?" Or,
mhm,
like, "This is my trip too. I really wanna do this." And, of course, especially if you're traveling with a group, there might have to be some compromise, but
sure.
unless you're going with people that are just very aligned with what you wanna do, which and I think that is I feel like that's such a healthy way to do it if it can be done, like, just really just taking ownership of your trip and what
Mhm.
you want it to look like, and, it's your precious money and energy and time
Yeah.
and all of the things. Yeah, and especially
I
feeling it's funny you brought up London too, because when I was like studying abroad. I was like 19, and me and my roommate went to London actually. And I brought up London Bridge. She wanted to go to the London Bridge. I wanted to go to Stratford upon Avon. I wanted to see where Shakespeare was born. So I easily could have just followed her and done all the touristy things,
Mhm.
but I took that train and I went to Stratford upon Avon, and it was like I saw his house and all the things, and I was like, I was so happy I did that. That
Yeah.
was like one of those let me get out of my comfort zone moments. And it was like a beautiful train ride. And I remember so much of that so vividly. And not that I maybe wouldn't have had a good time at the London Bridge, but like I was glad in those moments that I and she didn't fight me on it. It's not like I had to like stand up for myself like that. But I was glad that I was like, okay, you can go do your thing, I'll go do mine, and we'll meet up. And it was
Yeah.
like perfect. We both got what we wanted out of it. So
I like that because then one, you two can now talk about your experiences, right? Like you both went
yeah,
there and tell me how your trip was. I'll tell you how mine was. You're
right.
kind of feels like you're expanding the trip for both of you. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So one of the last questions I had for you, because I was again kind of reading like the work that you do. How do you feel like travel and like all of these experiences and this great mindset and all of the wellness practices that you have around all of this incorporate into the workplace? Is there anything there that you can kind of elaborate on, and in what capacity for you, like the work that you do, like how does that incorporate into kind of the workplace environment?
Yeah. One of the things I want to start with is the importance of communication.
Mhm.
I think that, especially when you're talking about work, we have, there are all these seminars and suggestions on how to communicate with other people. And I think some of the things that we skip over is how to have that internal conversation.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm such an advocate of solo travel, is because it
Yeah.
snatches you out of your routine.
Oh, yeah.
And because you can kind of lean on your routine to escape certain things or escape certain
Yeah.
decisions or thoughts that you're like, no, I don't want to feel this way. Or you press forward, you're really focused on work. And so when you're traveling, you're taken out of that environment. And then that allows you to
Mhm.
do that, have that self reflection, answer those questions, understand how you communicate with yourself negatively, positively, just get better understanding of who you are. Bringing
Mhm.
that back then to the workplace, you can reflect those same questions to the people that you work with, the people that
Mhm.
support you, or maybe you guys are not the best of friends. However, there are certain aspects that you learn in travel: patience, gratitude,
Mhm.
curiosity.
Yep.
And
Yep.
those can be put towards people that you work with. So being a little bit more patient and understanding that not everyone thinks like you, not everyone
Yeah.
is you. Maybe people don't have the same concerns that you do, but you have a different perspective. And so I think that allows
Yes.
you to kind of take a step back and observe and say, okay, this is probably a different environment for both of us, right? But
Right.
it's I think it's the most beautiful way how just experiencing a trip teaches you how to connect with the people that you see every day.
Yeah.
So learning all of that, and then when it comes to that communication, you're then able to better understand how to communicate with other people because
Mhm.
you're in a country that you could not speak the language
Just
and
more
you're able to
understanding.
communicate.
Yeah.
And so there's
Yes.
all those different ways of like, oh my gosh, yeah, I can make this make sense. I think it's just allowing yourself to have an open mind,
Yeah.
have an open heart, and being accepting of the fact that
Mm.
things aren't perfect. You're not
Yep.
perfect. The people that you work with aren't perfect. And I think that allows for that space of curiosity. Why do you think the way that you do? Same thing, the same
Yeah.
way that you would ask yourself a question, why do I make these certain assumptions? You would do the same with the people that you work with. And the last
Absolutely.
thing I think that solo travel teaches you is boundaries. So
Oh, yeah.
we talked about, hey, you do that over there, I'll be over here.
Yeah.
Saying that, practicing that, you can also bring that into the workplace. So setting those
Mhm.
boundaries. I have a limited amount of hours here. These are the certain things
Yep.
that I need to work and reflect on. I can't deal with this right now, or you have 15 minutes. Like it's
Yes.
okay. But I think
Yeah.
you have to practice that. And that everything isn't perfect is a part of that. Even if you're a little awkward at the first time you're trying to set those
Yep.
boundaries, doesn't mean you're limited to I should never ever do that again. You can always
Yeah.
practice. So just figure out what works for you and you bring that into being the person that you are in work.
I love that. Work in every aspect of life, of course, but
Mhm.
you just hit on so many great and important points and all things that I would absolutely hands down agree with as far as like the beauty of travel and what it can teach us and how it can enrich our lives and even in more dare I say technical ways like setting boundaries and like
Mhm.
all of these things the little things that we kind of don't even maybe think about in the moment or we don't realize until we travel, we get out of our comfort zone more and more and we realize like I'm a little bit of a different person like or what I was maybe intolerant of before or like less tolerant about something like I have more empathy towards it now. I have
Yes.
more patience. I at least I have more understanding so that our reactions are different and we don't, I have people around me where their world is very small
Mhm.
because they choose not to travel, they're not comfortable with it. There's maybe a variety of reasons for it, but and I say this with love, but you can tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really it's tough. It's a little tough sometimes to well, for me personally, to keep my mouth shut because I'm like, well, you just want to shake them and be like, okay, but like the world is also bigger than, this
So,
little
yeah.
bubble that you're in. So, and we just have to breathe and have patience, like you said, for people. But again, like that's where I keep using the word humbling, but I think that is like a great example of like a situation like that where you were saying like maybe you were somewhere really wildly different than you're used to and totally didn't understand the language, a lot of cultural differences, just how you order food or how you
Mhm.
anything, could be so different. And that's where I feel like, having those uh being in those situations and having those experiences are really they're a little scary and they can absolutely be uncomfortable at times, but like looking back on them, it's, yeah, there might be some cringy things that happen, but at the end of the day, like, what better way to like it's just teach us about life and how many ways that can, like you said, affect us from our work relationships, our interpersonal relationships,
Mhm.
our we're just I don't know. I think it just breeds hopefully a little more kindness and empathy in the world. And I was literally saying this in another episode with a guest recently, but when I was studying abroad, they literally taught us like the term because we were 19 at the time, not everyone knew the term being ethnocentric.
Mhm.
And they were like, this is important for you to know. Don't go into it was Italy in this case, like don't go into these situations thinking kinda it all.
Right.
Like, be
Right.
open to learning and being like, be very aware that, like, you are going into a different culture with a different language, and they do different things. So, just be observant and respectful and, remember that the way that you do things not only is not the way that they do them, but, like, who's to say one is better than the other,
Yeah.
right? Or, like, I also brought up the example of, like, people in the UK driving on the opposite side of the road, it's here, I hear a lot of people say, "It's the wrong side of the road."
Right.
Well, who says it's the wrong side of the road? Like,
It's different.
who says which one is right and who's wrong, you know what I mean? So it's like, just those little moments where, you kinda catch yourself and realize like, "Oh, I'm a much smaller thing here in the grand scheme of life and this world, and there's a lot of people in it." So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just I don't know, but it's like I say humbling, but it can be in a really, great way, and like it's like you
Yeah.
as you're mentioning, this the gratitude piece of it, like, it can make us just feel very or you never know, I've been in situations where it's like you see something kinda rough and you're like, "Wow, I'm very, very grateful that I'm here right now, but I'm also very grateful for what I do have at home
Right.
and what I have to go back to," and I realize how lucky I am. So, so many different perspectives that traveling can give us. Could go on and on, obviously, but
No, I
yeah.
travel is a wonderful personal development tool. Like,
Yes.
if it could be
Well
required
said.
for everyone
Oh,
to
God, I
travel,
wish.
I think that would be amazing.
Excellent. Yeah, if we could just put then like a training program for like literally every company out
Yes.
there. Just a week of travel before you start work sounds great to me.
Oh my goodness.
Also just more vacation days, but that's okay. That's a podcast for another day. Um we need to get petition signed for that. The US has a long way to go there, but
We've
anyway.
got work to do.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. But Grace, this was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, the very last thing I wanted to mention, your podcast,
Oh, yeah.
The Random and Wonderful. It's such a fun title, and I was listening to a little episode earlier today as well.
Oh,
Do you want to just quickly just mention your podcast and what you talk about there? Because again, I think we're very kind of aligned in a lot of ways. But
yeah.
you have a great podcast as well.
Thank you. So, The Random and Wonderful is a travel story collection. I interview guests, I share my own experience as well, and it's just what are the wonderful things that we've learned from our travel or our trips. My point and focus is just to share the impact of travel as well as give little confidence building tips for those who
Love
are
it.
hesitant to travel, or maybe you'd like to expand your travel experience. You've got stories to build off of. So that's my goal.
Yeah. I love it. I love that it's from your own experiences, but like again, this is what I love about conversations like this where you get to hear someone else's kind of perspective on it and take little bits and pieces from everyone all over and we're all from different places too, right? And we all like
Mhm.
to maybe travel a little bit differently. So, it's amazing. We all get a little something from anywhere. So, I love it. Thank you again so much. And also if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
So you can find me on at Amethyst Palaver Hut. My website, you'll have all the lovely links. You can subscribe
Great.
to the newsletter and catch the podcast as well.
Awesome. Okay. That'll be all linked in the show notes as well. But Grace, I really appreciate your time and wisdom and this awesome conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us and tuning into the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. We really appreciate you being here and hope you're enjoying these honest conversations about all things sipping, savoring, and seeing the world. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, we would truly appreciate a rating or review on whatever platform you're tuning in on so fellow foodies, Epicureans, and travel enthusiasts can enjoy this content too. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a follow at Taste Toast Travel. We'll see you in the next episode.